"Hey, Umbrella Boy, why are you the leader?" As the boy said that, he looked at Quinn's wristwatch and blurted out a laugh. "You should be down on your knees begging for me to show you mercy, boy." Quinn had a fake smile on his face, hiding the anger behind it. "Why would I beg with someone weaker than me?" At that point, the boy was too aggravated. He was already annoyed at the fact that a level 1 even tried to talk back to him. The boy used his super speed powers to launch off his feet at amazing speed, going straight for Quinn. "You should have just said sorry," Sia said, watching from behind. The speed was impressive, and was even faster than Quinn at top speed, but there was one skill where speed meant nothing. He looked into the boy's eyes. "Day's skill successful?" Quinn had used the skill at the right time, making the boy stop right in front of him. "You broke my friend's arm, and so it's only right I break yours," Quinn said, as he grabbed and pulled one arm forward while slamming his fist down on the forearm. Quinn had tried his best to contain his strength when dealing with the blow, but it was still too strong with his gauntlets equipped. Unlike Peter, the bone had snapped and pierced the skin. Howls of pain were heard immediately. His friends were shocked. They didn't know what happened, but it looked like the boy had stopped just in front of Quinn and let him hit. Was he too cocky, they thought? Maybe because it was a level 1, he was trying to give Quinn a chance, not realizing he had some strength or weak ability. As soon as they saw their friend injured, though, each of them drew their weapons and prepared their ability, while Quinn's group had done the same. But Vorden wasn't too happy about the current situation. For right now, he hadn't copied any useful ability he could use. Sia was a little nervous, since this was the last outcome she had expected, but right now she was on Quinn's team and would help her team out if a fight was to break out. The two groups looked like they were ready to clash. Before they even got the chance, a loud bang was heard. When they looked over in the direction, they could see that Dell had placed his large shield down, hitting it to the ground. The two groups were only around 50 meters from the outskirts. The scream was so loud that it had caught Dell's attention, and he immediately came rushing over after checking there were no beasts around. "Enough!" he shouted. "This event is about working together. Although it is a competition, this is only to encourage you to work harder rather than slack off. You are not to fight against each other." Dell then looked at the boy's arm, which had been broken. "Take him to the center. I'll try to see if there is anyone with a healing ability that can help him out. As for you guys," Dell said, pointing at Quinn and the others. He still hadn't forgotten both Vorden's and Quinn's faces. They were the two students who had made him risk his life in the redo portal world. "For severely harming another team's teammate, you shall be deducted 50 points for whatever total score you receive on today's assessment." "But they attacked us first," Layla complained. "I see no injuries on any of your party members," Dell replied. When they went to look at Peter, they found out it was true. Peter's arm had already healed, and it didn't look like he had even been hit. With that, the group was to take their punishment and carry on with the task. "Come on, we need to be more aggressive if we still want to come out on top while we're already at a disadvantage," Quinn said. The team nodded and got to work again. The group was 50 points behind now, which was the same as them finding 10 plants. That one argument over a single plant had cost the team a lot. But Sia tried not to smile. How could these guys be crazy enough to think that they could come back from a deficit like that? However, crazy wasn't bad. Sia liked crazy. Although there was still one thing she couldn't understand. It seemed like everyone in the group was listening to Quinn's orders. Not only that, but when he was being aggressive with the other team, not a single one of them had stepped in. Was it because they knew what the result was going to be? She thought. No, it can't be. I'm probably just overthinking it. The battle for points was fierce as students continued to run around the area, scanning every item in sight. "Damn, this has been scanned already," a student complained. "Yes, there's another one here that's 2 now," another yelled out. Some of the weaker groups decided to stay together as they went around. Although this stopped other teams from snatching points from them, their progress was relatively slower than those who roamed alone. The stronger groups decided it would be best to split up. This way they were able to cover a wider range, while the other groups decided to do a mixture of something in between. Even though the group thought that Dell was being harsh in his punishment, it wasn't truly the case. He had planned to do something similar beforehand, but wasn't quite sure how to do it until the incident gave him an excuse. Quinn's group had an extra person, so they were at an advantage compared to others. But since there was only one scanner, it was hard to say how much influence an extra member could give. But after seeing Vorden and Quinn's faces once more, his emotions got the better of him as a teacher, and he decided to give them quite a setback. Out of the strategies implemented by different groups, to catch up to the others, Quinn's group decided to do a mixture of the two. They decided that they would travel around in pairs. Quinn and Peter, Layla and Vorden, and lastly, Fex and Sia. In the beginning there was some disagreement about the pairings, but eventually they agreed on this setup. At the end of the day it would be better for Peter to be with Quinn, and Vorden refused to team up with Sia, so that left him with Layla and Fex with Sia, to make the relative strength of each group about the same. It was important for them to have one strong member with a support-type member. Although Layla and Sia could have gone together if they were to confront a beast, or a similar situation happened with Peter, there wasn't much that they could do. The group had already split up, and while everyone was off looking for some new items to discover, Quinn noticed something peculiar. There were 10 groups, yet nearly every group had a single member that acted as a type of mule, a person designated to carry their belongings. After a closer inspection, he also noticed that these mules were people who had the lowest levels in their group. Nevertheless, they would still wander off and look around, as instructed by their team. Wouldn't this be the perfect chance? Quinn thought. Right now they weren't in school, and many of the students had separated from each other. If he was to take a sample of their blood and mind control them afterwards to forget what had happened, no one would ever know what he had done. It was the perfect crime in such a perfect situation. "Pio, over here!" Sia shouted. Peter then dashed off in the direction that Sia had yelled, but Quinn didn't follow. Instead, he set his eyes on a target. A lone female student had been designated to carry her team's luggage. She seemed to be disheartened by the whole thing and was searching through the trees and vines with a crestfallen face. It was obvious that she didn't feel like she was doing anything substantial, or that she was even a part of the team. She bent down to look at a certain plant behind the tree. When she lifted her head again, Quinn was standing in front of her. He didn't say much because he needed to act as quickly as possible. Although they were covered by the trees and vines, there was always a chance that someone could see him. Quinn grabbed her hand as fast as he could and made a small scratch on her palm. Her blood was now on the tip of his gauntlet. After placing it on his tongue, the system message appeared. Blood type A positive consumed. Strength 20. Quinn was disappointed a little since he was hoping to obtain O-type blood to increase his charm stat. Right now his selection was limited. He had to choose low-level students with lackluster abilities who most likely had a weak mind too. But if his charm skills eventually increased, the pool of people to choose from would also increase directly proportional to his charm skills. Influence skill activated. The girl's eyes started to glow slightly red, a clear indication that his skill was active. Quinn informed the girl to forget about the event that just occurred. Nothing strange had happened. To her, it would feel as if she had forgotten what she was about to do. Before ending the spell, Quinn placed some of his saliva over the small cut, allowing it to heal instantly, before heading back towards the center as he continued his exploration. While the others were busy calling out to Peter and looking for new things, Quinn was looking around to see if he could spot any other strays that weren't with their group, and was also in a well-hidden area, as if they were hiding their shame and embarrassment to the others due to being designated as a luggage-carrying mule. Eventually, Quinn managed to find 2 more students, and he used the same tactic as before, getting him another 2 stat points. Quinn managed to get another blood type O, increasing his charm points to 14, while also obtaining another blood type A, increasing his strength. Faye and Leo were standing together at the starting point where all the groups had split off. They stood there, silently. Leo didn't talk much, and Faye didn't know how to speak with him. Suddenly, a beeping sound was heard from their watches, indicating that one of the teams had asked for help. "I'll get to it," Faye said as she stormed off at lightning speed in the direction of one of the paths. Faye was meant to be the first one to respond, since her ability was super speed, but she felt even more obliged to act due to the awkward situation between her and Leo. Leo stood there, taking in the fresh smell around him, but it was quickly disturbed as another beep reverberated from his watch. "Another one?" Leo said. "Is this planet more dangerous than we thought? I hope there aren't any more calls," Leo said as he ran in a different direction from where Faye had gone. He had hoped that perhaps the teachers were only being trigger-happy, sending out a signal prematurely. It was always better for them to be on the cautious side when it came to these things, but the fact that 2 signals were sent out at the same time concerned Leo. The group had managed to obtain 25 points in total. They also discovered and scanned a peculiar type of rock mineral in the mix. Still, they were vastly behind the others, and their weighted points at the end of everything would be -25. What they were doing at this moment wasn't working, and they needed a change of plan. The quickest way for them to earn points would be to find beasts, but right now there didn't seem to be any beasts in the area, as not a single group of students had encountered one just yet. But once they moved away from this area at Dell's command, which was when Quinn and his group would change their focus, the weaker groups wouldn't dare to risk it by going up against such things. Ding, ding, ding. Just then, a few meters away from Quinn, one of the scanners had made 3 dings, a sound that he hadn't heard yet. Dell didn't even bother explaining to the students the meaning of the dings, but they soon found out what the sounds meant. The scanner pointed at what looked like a boulder that was stuck in the ground. The top part could be seen, and it had several areas of green moss growing over it. But after the student had finished scanning the unique object, he took a few steps backward. Panic was evident on his face. "A beast!" he shouted. "I found a beast!" The student's teammates had gathered around the excited student to see what he was babbling on about. While a few others took a step back, Dell was watching carefully with his hand placed just above his communicator, ready to call one of the sergeants at any time. However, there were a few students who moved forward. These tended to be the stronger ones, or those that enjoyed the battle aspect more. Even though they would no longer obtain any points from scanning the beast, they could still and obtain the beast's crystal. One of the students who was moving closer turned out to be Quinn. The system granted him a special bonus when he first, though this beast has never been seen by humans before. Perhaps being the first person to kill such a beast would also grant him additional points. The idea that perhaps the system would reward him even further than this drove him to have a keen interest. Still, he stood a few steps away from the results everyone was waiting for. The team that had discovered the beast gathered around the scanner, which displayed basic information about the beasts, and after reading one line, they were excited. It was a basic tier beast. Keeping this secret to themselves, they immediately dashed forward. If it was an intermediate tier beast, the group might have been a little cautious, but a basic tier was easy pickings for a team of 5. Seeing the team of 5, Quinn was upset about how hesitant he had been. But he couldn't act right now in front of these people. It wasn't worth it, but maybe there was something he could do. The beast that the group was chasing looked like an ordinary boulder that was stuck in the ground. It was nearly impossible to tell the difference between the boulders that had been there covered in moss and a beast. Even now, as the students charged towards the thing, there was no reaction from the beast. It still looked like a boulder. Seeing this, an idea came to Quinn's mind. He ran aside the students who were captivated by what was happening and entered a different part of the forest. "What's he doing?" Fex thought as he saw Quinn dart off to the side. Fex, too, decided to go off and keep an eye on what Quinn was trying to do. "Come on, guys, we can't waste time just watching this thing. Let's carry on looking around," Vorden said. The other groups felt the same way, while others decided to stay and watch what a beast would look like on the planet they were on. The student's hand who was leading the charge turned into a brick-like substance, while the other students behind also drew their weapons and had their abilities readied. The student at the front slammed his fist into the boulder. A loud impact was heard, but there was no reaction. The ones from behind had also decided to use their attacks on the strange boulder-like beast, but the same had happened, and it seemed like the shell was nearly impossible to break. "Is this thing a beast?" the student asked. "I understand if it has a hard shell, but then why isn't it doing anything when I attack it?" Seeing that the so-called beast was doing nothing and not wanting to waste any more time, the students continued to scan around for other things. However, there were some more students who tried hurting the beast, hoping to get the crystal, but there was no such luck. They felt like if they took the time, they perhaps could have figured out how to deal with the beast. But to put in so much effort to only get a basic crystal in return didn't make much sense to them. While everyone else had now lost interest in the beast, Quinn had not. He went through the forest using his inspection skill on every boulder-type thing he could see. Most of them were just that, regular boulders, but then he had finally achieved a result. Basic tier beast, boulder snail. A beast that has an incredibly hard outer shell. The beast will only move in rain. Quinn had traveled quite a distance away from the others, a little too much that he was now properly out of the zone. If he was to use his team's scanner, it would register that he was out of the area Dell had mentioned. Right now, he was only focused on one thing, unaware that the others were unable to defeat the beast. Quinn thought he was under a time frame. He wanted to be the first person to kill the beast. After hearing about the description, he had an idea. Quinn stopped just in front of the boulder and readied himself. He looked around him just in case. Even though he was out of the area the students were supposed to be in, he was unsure if there might have been a stray. "Doesn't look like anyone's around," Quinn said. He was unaware that he was being watched by Fex. Using strings as he walked between trees in the air, he made his movements silently, and now he was carefully watching Quinn from above. Quinn stomped his foot onto the ground, raised the energy inside him, and pulled back his arm as he let his other fist outward at the same time. He activated his skill Blood Spray to create his still most powerful strike, Blood Hammer. If he couldn't damage the outside, then he would go for an attack that hurt the inside. As his fist hit the shell, the powerful impact caused a loud bang. It sounded like someone had shot off a bullet in the middle of the forest. The beast had a large crack in the boulder, and black liquid was slowly dripping out from it. "Was that the hammer strike?" Fex said as he watched in shock. "But I thought he was a complete beginner." "No, he is a complete beginner." The hammer strike was an advanced move that was only usually taught to students after they understood the basics of martial arts. But after teaching Quinn, Fex decided to not teach him anything else. Yet, here he had just witnessed Quinn perform a skill beyond the basic martial arts, just like the flash step. So he really must have a teacher then. Maybe they're the one that taught him the shadow ability as well? I need to find out more, Fex thought. Basic beast has been killed. 50 EXP gained. First time boulder snail. 100 bonus EXP gained. You are the first person to kill boulder snail. 5,000 bonus EXP gained. Looks like I made it in time, Quinn said. After looking at the results of being the first person to kill such a beast, he was even happier with the decision he made. Now, the loud sound that erupted from the impact of the blood hammer on the beast's shell had echoed throughout the forest. Even the students who were 200 meters or so could hear it, but they chose to ignore it since the sound was a distance away. It wasn't their concern. But the sound had traveled a good distance. Within its chambers, a large figure dwelling deep inside a cave awoke. Bloodshot red eyes flared open as it made its move towards the sound. A stab with her rapier, Faye jumped back to avoid the black blood that would spurt out from the beast. Then a quick change of her weapons that couldn't be followed by regular human eyes. She had changed to a sword. She swirled around and struck the snake-like beast from the tail up, slicing its body in half. "Was that all of them?" Faye said in an annoyed voice as she looked at the shy female teacher. "Yes," the teacher replied as she bowed her head in shame. After the distress call was received from one of the groups, Faye came at full speed towards the area. It seemed like the students had encountered a group of intermediate-tier beasts. The snake-like creature hung above the trees. When the students entered the area to explore, they had dropped down. The female teacher was frightened, and before even confirming what level of beasts they were, she had asked for help. When Faye arrived, she was annoyed. She could tell just from a glance that these beasts weren't above the intermediate level, and as the students, including the teacher herself, engaged in combat, she could as well. But once the distress signal was already called, it meant Faye had to check it out no matter what, and while she was here, she felt like she should quickly help the students deal with the situation. An intermediate beast could be dealt with by a group of 5, but it would still be a hard task and distract them from their goal. Looking at the teacher, Faye was about to give her a scolding. Just then, A ding sound was heard, and her watch lit up again. "Another one! I swear if this is the same thing, I will be having a word with all the first-year teachers when I get back." With those words said in anger, she left the site. The teacher felt like fate was on her side and had stopped her from getting a scolding as she wiped the sweat from her forehead. 5,330 out of 400 EXP. You are now level 13. 2 stat points have been gained. 4,930 out of 800 XP. You are now level 14. 2 stat points have been gained. 4,130 of 1,600 EXP. You are now level 15. 2 stat points have been gained. 2,530 out of 3,200 EXP points. For defeating the new type of beast, Quinn had gained a bonus of 5,000 points, which had leveled him up a total of 3 times, and now he also had 6 free stat points to play with. This was the result of being the first to kill an undiscovered beast, and it was only the basic tier. So far, the system had always rewarded Quinn more when killing beasts of a higher tier. Although he did receive less EXP for killing a basic tier beast after evolving, similar to how he obtained no EXP from fighting low-level students. If this was to continue, as Quinn leveled up, he would not only have to look for higher-level opponents, but also higher-level beasts for EXP. Did this mean at some point Quinn would no longer receive EXP? There had to be a cap to these things, and once Quinn was strong enough, he would no longer be able to obtain EXP even from the strongest of enemies. But Quinn could never imagine that happening. For now, he thought it was best if he was to keep these stat points in reserve. The stat points automatically add up when he consumes blood, especially O-type. Quinn would have to immediately choose what the stat would go into before progressing. However, it wasn't the same when leveling up. The stat could be saved, and just underneath his status screen, a number would appear, displaying how many stat points he could use. Quinn wanted to place the stat points into his charm skill. It was more beneficial for him to increase this skill, so he could get more blood in the future. But right now, there wasn't anyone else traveling on their own, and it would be hard for him to not be caught. Still, the Orange Portal planet was a dangerous place, and Quinn didn't know when he might need to use his other stats for dangerous situations. Before leaving the area, Quinn managed to shove his hand into the small crack he had made. The shell now seemed a lot softer and was easier to break. Since the beast was dead, the crystal inside was no longer powering its defensive capabilities. After swirling his hand around inside the beast, he eventually felt a solid object and pulled the crystal out, even though it was only a basic tier crystal. Quinn was already thinking about what type of armor the crystal could be used for. It had a good defense, after all, so it would be best made into either a defensive item or a piece of armor. The crystal was stored in his system inventory. Quinn had returned to his group, and he could see Fex by Sia's side as well. He had managed to leave just after seeing Quinn kill the beast, and did not see what Quinn had done with the crystal after. As Quinn walked past him and went to join up with Peter, Fex did his best to look as unsuspicious as possible. He started whistling away while looking through the trees. "Did you do something wrong?" Sia asked. She could tell that Fex was acting strange ever since he returned. Hearing this caused Fex to jolt back a bit. "No, I'm just getting bored. Why would I have anything to hide? Maybe you have something to hide, and that's why you're accusing me of having something to hide," Fex replied. "You know, that's a classic line by someone who's been caught," Sia replied as she walked off, already uninterested in whatever Fex was trying to hide. It had been over an hour now, and the group had a total of 60 points. They had finally recovered from their deficit. They were unable to see where they were, as none of the groups knew each other's scores. But they had a rough idea from watching, and with the 50-point deduction, they wouldn't be surprised if they were still in the last place. Now, when students were scanning items with the scanner, it would constantly come up with an error. 15 minutes had passed, and there wasn't a single sound indicating the students had found something. The only beast that was found was the strange boulder beast as well. "I guess it's time for us to move on," Dell said. A larger device was tied around his waist, which looked like a larger version of the scanner the students had. After pressing several buttons on his scanner, a sound was heard, and suddenly none of the students were able to scan anything at the moment. "All right, students, everyone gather up in the center. It's time for us to move on to the next area," Dell shouted. As the students started to walk over to Dell, loud, low sounds could be heard, and vibration could be felt underneath their feet. "What is that?" a student said, worried as the loud sounds were consistent. It was clear that something large was coming towards them, and it wasn't human. The loud sounds started to get louder, and now they could hear trees crashing into the ground. Every student was looking in the direction from where the sound was coming. Two of the trees closest to the open part of the forest were knocked down, and now they could see what was making all that noise. A large beast stood on all fours and had a long neck. There was no fur, and it resembled something similar to a dinosaur. Even the size was something similar to what they would have imagined. The only difference was on its back. It seemed to have a large flower bud. It completely covered it from its neck to its tail. The students picked up their scanners and immediately started to scan the beast. The size wasn't always the indicator of strength. Quickly, they realized their scanners had been turned off by Dell, and they were unable to tell the level of the beast. But for Quinn, it was different. Advanced Tier Beast Florosaur, unable to obtain further information. Guys, we have to run, Quinn said in a serious tone. They didn't know why, but Quinn was shocked after seeing the beast. Perhaps it was his vampire senses telling him this was a strong beast, Vorden thought. But it wasn't the case. Feck stood unaware of the danger in front of them. Some vampires were able to sense how dangerous a beast was, but Feck's senses still weren't at that level yet. So to him, it just looked like any other beast, only this one was a little larger. After finding out it was an advanced tier beast, Quinn didn't even think about the possibility of trying to defeat it because of its experience points. Last time, he almost died fighting against an intermediate beast. There was no way for Quinn to tell how strong the intermediate beast he fought against was. Some were stronger than others, but whenever there was a jump up in the level of beast tiers, there was a definite strength difference. He didn't have the confidence to defeat it, and not while hiding his abilities. Even though Fex was by his side, who had supposedly 10 advanced tier beasts. Fex had the same problem as Quinn. He too was unable to reveal himself in front of this many people. However, if Fex honestly did know the level of the beast, even he would have been frightened. Fex, like Quinn, faced an intermediate beast and barely made it out alive. He wasn't strong enough to easily deal with one, and not while hiding his powers. The students were also frightened, mostly because of the size of the beast. It came out of the forest and stopped right in front of them, and was now glaring at everyone. The beast was a little larger than a 2-floor house, while its long neck stretched out, causing a shadow to be cast over the students at the front. Seeing the beast, Dell nervously took the larger scanner from his side. His hands were shaking as he pointed it at the creature, and after a few seconds, his fears were confirmed. It was an advanced level beast. Dell was never much of a fighter, and his ability also didn't support that fact. Immediately, he started tapping his wristwatch, sending out a distress signal. He was unaware of how many times he had pressed the button. Dell just wanted one of the sergeants to appear in front of them now. Out of all the students, Quinn was the first to take a step away, trying to get a head start on the other students, but the sound of his steps caused the leaves to ruffle, and the creature's head turned and immediately looked at Quinn. "Maybe moving isn't a good idea," Layla said. "Yeah, while it's not being aggressive, let's not do anything," Quinn replied. Dell had felt the same way, which was why he hadn't shouted at the students to run away or retreat. The sudden movements could frighten the beasts. Most beasts were hostile towards humans, but the higher tiers seemed to have more intelligence, and some would leave humans alone. Although, that didn't stop the humans from hunting them for their crystals. Dell was hoping that the students at least knew this basic knowledge and wouldn't try attacking the beast, giving them all the best chance for survival. The bud on the beast's back slowly started to open up, revealing a pink center. Out of the pink center, 6 vines rose in the air before dropping down and falling to the beast's side. The vines seemed to be alive and being controlled by the beast. Although the beast wasn't moving, the vines were stretching out from the buds as if there was no end in sight. One of the vines had reached the student closest to the beast. The end of the vine was slightly larger and looked similar to the head of the beast itself, but was still green in color. Right now, the head of the vine was floating directly about in front of the student. His heart was beating loudly, and he now had his eyes closed, hoping that if he couldn't see the beast, it would somehow calm down his nerves. After waiting a while, nothing happened. The student eventually opened his eyes. At that moment, the head of the vine opened up and attached itself to the student. Using both hands, he grabbed onto the vine and tried to pull as hard as he could, but it was no use. The suction and stickiness of the vine were too strong, and he couldn't break free. The vine lifted the student high into the air and towards the beast's mouth. As it opened up its mouth, several sharp teeth could be seen, and the beast took a bite that caused nearly half to appear. "Everyone run! It's a hostile advanced tier beast!" Dell shouted as he ran into a random part of the forest. Most of the students decided to follow where Dell had gone. It was an instinct for students when in time of need to rely on adults, especially since Dell was their teacher and was meant to be there for their guidance. The beast continued to use its vines to grab the students closest, and as they screamed in pain and cried out for their teacher's help, Dell closed his eyes and tried to ignore them. "If I go back and try to save them now, we could all... This is the right thing to do," he told himself. The students who had gotten a head start had managed to create a distance between them and the beast. The beast still hadn't moved and was busy eating the it caught. However, while Dell was running blindly through the forest, he was aware of a great problem. The distress signal sent from the watch was only a signal sent to the sergeants. As stated before, the GPS tracker and other features of the watch didn't work well, or not at all, on other planets. Even the scanner could only work with the technology of the master scanner that Dell had. The system was designed in a way that when a signal was sent, the sergeants could tell which team was signaling them. They would then head over in that direction. If Leo or Faye was to head there now, they would have no clue where Dell or the other students had gone. But right now, they had no choice. Suddenly, the loud sound of the footsteps could be heard coming in their direction once again. The beast was on the move and had finished its snack. Quinn's group was quite fast and was just behind Dell. Peter had picked up Layla and held her in his hands, while surprisingly, Sia was able to keep up with them. Fex and Quinn were not traveling at full speed, as they made sure to stay behind Dell, unaware that Dell had no plan. The students at the back could hear the booming footsteps getting louder and louder. In the end, the temptation got the better of them. They turned around and were caught by one of the vines. Some of the students were a bit smarter in their movements and would travel in between trees, making it harder for the beast to catch them. Still, it did nothing to slow down the main beast's body, as it would continue to bulldoze its way through the trees. When Dell had made it past another tree, they had finally come out to an open area. A small vertical wall with vines on could be seen, most likely the side of a mountain. Dell thought about attempting to climb it, but would take some time for them to scale, and the beast would catch up to them by then. The open area was quite large. To the left and right there were two paths, but they were slightly slanted going uphill, and Dell didn't like their chances of outrunning the beast. "We have no choice. We have to turn and fight," Dell shouted. The 40 or so students knew the seriousness of the situation. They turned around facing the forest, which they had just exited from, and prepared their weapons and abilities. A few moments later, and the beast came crashing through, with trees flying off to the side. "If we want to live, I might have to fight with everything I've got," Quinn said. Blood was dripping from the beast's mouth. It was quite a shocking sight for both Fex and Quinn. They also consumed blood, but this wasn't the same. One of the students in could be seen dangling from the side of the beast's mouth, and this was too much, even for them. The vines continued to hover around the beast's side as if they were alive like snakes, while the main body of the beast charged straight ahead into the students. Like a whip, the vines were used to knock the students who were closest to it. It caused quite a deep cut amongst the student's body that had been hit. They felt like they had been hit with a sword. The attack was so fast and sharp that it even felt like one. Some of the students that saw their friends hurt started to rush towards them. "No, don't!" Dell shouted. Dell had propped his shield up and dug it into the ground while staying behind. His ability wasn't that great, so all he could do was stay at the back, near the mountain wall. "Healers and support-type abilities, come and stay behind me. We don't want you to get hurt," Dell commanded. "Anyone who uses a beast weapon as their main attack, come closer to me now." They did as their teacher told them to. Right now, the element abilities were busy distracting the beast, aiming for the attack against the legs, while other students would try their best to block the vines. The one using beast weapons as their main attack went to Dell while he was placing his hand on each item. "I wonder what he's doing," Quinn thought as he went over to take a closer look. My ability allows me to double the strength and durability of any beast weapon for a limited time. We need to defeat the beast before time runs out," Quinn overheard Dell said. Hearing this, Quinn too lined up waiting for the teacher. Those who had their equipment improved went to join in the fight with the other students. There was a mixture of people. Some were scared. Some felt like they had no choice but to fight, and a few of them enjoyed the thrill of a fight and couldn't help themselves but join in. Quinn was the last to line up, and eventually it got to his turn. "Boy, there's no point wasting this on you," Dell said. "Will you even get in a fight? Besides, I can only use my ability so many times in a day, it would be a waste on you." These words had angered Quinn. If he was going to use his vampire abilities, he thought he might be able to help out greatly just using his beast weapons. With all the students attacking the beast at once, it would be hard for them to tell where the bulk of the damage had come from. "What about you?" Quinn said. "Why are you allowed to hide back here, while the others are attacking and defending? Is this shield just for show?" "Yeah, you try to be a smart," Dell replied. "As you can see, I'm here protecting all the students behind me." As Quinn looked at the students behind Dell, he could see many of them with fear and shock on their faces. A few even had tears in their eyes as they saw their friends get hurt. "I have to help him," a woman cried as she went running forward, but her friend quickly pulled her back towards their group. "Don't! I know you want to try to save him, but if you get hurt, we can't save anyone," another female replied. Out of all the students in Dell's class, her ability worked more like a buff, increasing the overall strength of a student, but still, it would be better than leaving them out there. About 8 of the students had been attacked by the vine-like whip. It seemed like the beast had stopped eating students while there were many around attacking it. Still, the wounds on these students were quite bad, and the 2 of them were unable to move. After hearing what Dell said, Quinn didn't want to help out, but after seeing the sad look on the faces of the others, he knew he had to do something. "Pio, come!" Quinn shouted as he dashed off towards the fallen students on the ground. "Is he going to try to save them?" a student asked. "No, he's only a level 1. He must just be an idiot." Peter wasn't the only one that was following Quinn. Right now on his other side, Fex was running closely behind him as well. "I'll cover you while you do whatever you want to do, but you will owe me one after this," Fex said with a wink. As the 3 boys got closer to the beast, the vine started to head towards them, slashing out at an incredible speed. The first one was towards Peter, who attempted to grab the vine, but it was just too fast. It had slipped through and sliced the palm of his hands quite deep. As usual, there was no pain, and his hand was already starting to heal. Now on the other side, another vine was coming towards them, and this time it was Fex's turn. Fex was a vampire and was unable to use his ability just like Quinn. However, there was a clear advantage of Fex's ability over others. When using his string ability, it was almost invisible to the human eye. As the vine came towards him, spread both his hands out and slashed it downward, cutting the head of the vine right off. However, just like with Peter, the vine seemed to have an incredible recovery speed, and right now, the head was starting to form out of the cut cells by Fex. Quinn placed his finger into the student's blood around the chest. It was too far away for the other students to see the finer details, and everyone else was busy fighting the beast. Quickly shifting his hand into his mouth, he quickly picked up the student and rushed back to the others. "AB blood type consumed, stamina 18. Quinn repeated this process with the other students who had been hit. In total, he managed to save 5 students, and at the same time consume their blood, while the others had been flung away or were too deep fighting in the carnage for Quinn to get the chance to consume their blood. All in all, Quinn had gotten stronger. Strength 23, agility 19, stamina 18, charm 16. Fex didn't let Quinn's strange habits go unnoticed. Even if he did enjoy the taste of blood greatly like some vampires did, to do so in the middle of a battle was a bit crazy. While Quinn was busy looking at his stats and the 2 by his side were busy dealing with the vines, a 3rd vine had already set its sight on Quinn. When the 2 had looked at each other, the vine had set its target. It reached out as far as it could to grab onto Quinn, but he wasn't as nimble. He moved back and saw the vine would soon catch up. Just as the vine was about to reach Quinn, its movements suddenly slowed, and Quinn was able to create a distance between the 2. He looked around, seeing what possibly could have been the cause. That's when he noticed the strange, ghost-like spear, half of its body inside an elephant. The spirit spear? Quinn said confusingly. Upon looking back, he could see Sia had decided to help out by using her spear. Thanks to Sia's spear, the beast had slowed down just enough for Quinn to move out of the way, avoiding the vine whip. Fex and Peter had also now resorted to dodging after they found out the incredible growth speed of the vines. However, the fact that the beast was slowed down didn't go unnoticed. A second spear was thrown and had landed in the same spot on the beast's legs. The effective 2 spears had stacked, and now the beast was 20% slower than it usually would have been, and also 20% weaker. The students took advantage of this temporary weakness. Their attacks, which were bouncing off the beast, are now damaging it, and the vines that were troubling slowed down. Still, the beast was strong, and even at 80% of its strength, it was able to fend off the attacks from 40 different students. Sia threw her spirit spears at the beast. At most, though, she was only able to stack up 2 spears. Whenever she would throw a third spear into the beast, the first one would have already lasted for 5 seconds and disappear. Her ability was perfect for situations like this. The beast was a big target, and other than its vines, its main body wasn't too fast unless it was running in a straight line. If she was to go up against other beasts, even some intermediate beasts, it might have been harder for her to use her ability, but right now she was one of the most important people when it came to taking down this creature. "If only we could make it even weaker," Dell said. At that moment, a blonde stood by Sia's side, and in his hand he too had a spirit spear. "Looks like you have quite a good ability there," Vorden said as he threw the spear into the beast's leg. With Vorden and Sia using their spirit spears, the beast had now lost 40% of its overall strength. It was nearly half of what it used to be. The students were now doing even better than before, and even the ones whose weapons had been reinforced by Dell were working. Quinn no longer felt the need for him or Fex to get involved when fighting the beast. The students that had been brought back to Quinn were getting treatment from the support students. Now that the beast's movements had slowed, they had joined the battle and went to support their teammates using buffs and other skills. The only one that remained in position with a smile on his face was Dell. "This is brilliant. It looks like these students might be able to take down an advanced beast after all. I might even get a promotion for this," Dell thought excitedly. Looking at him, Quinn felt like he could read his teacher like an open book, especially after their earlier interaction. He got the sense that Dell was quite a selfish person, and he was right. Even now, although the situation had gotten better, it wasn't perfect. Students still ended up dying, but all Dell could think about was himself. After a good 15 minutes of constant attacks from most of the students, other than Quinn, Fex decided to lay low. Even Peter and Layla were actively helping. The beast now looked heavily injured. It lifted its front 2 feet into the air and slammed them onto the ground. The mass weight of the beast caused the ground to shake around the students a little. It also served as a reminder to the other student that this beast was still mighty strong. The beast repeatedly did this action as it roared and screamed. At the same time, the vines that were coming off from the bud on its back swung more widely. "What is this? Have the spears worn off or something?" a student said. But looking at the beast, the spears from Vorden and Sia remained. They continued to attack the beast. Although at this point, Sia was feeling incredibly drained along with Vorden. They had been using their abilities non-stop and didn't know how much longer they could last. The beast used its long head and looked back into the forest. The next moment, it started running back from where it came from. The students who stood behind the beast rolled and dived out of the way in fear of getting trampled on. "Should we chase it? If it's running away, doesn't that mean it's nearly dead?" a student asked. Quinn also had the same thought. If the beast was injured and the others weren't going to chase it, then maybe he could. Killing an advanced beast would gain him an enormous amount of EXP points. "Nobody should chase the beast," Dell shouted. "Some advanced-type beasts and above have something called a berserker mode. Once injured to a certain point, if the beast feels like it's stuck in a corner, it will activate its berserker mode, sometimes increasing its strength several times." After hearing Dell's explanation, Quinn had second thoughts about chasing the beast. He was reminded of the beast's strength before the debuff from Vorden and Sia. On top of that, 40 students were fighting it at once. If a single person was given the task to deal with the advanced beast, Quinn couldn't imagine anyone coping. All of the vines would be free to attack you, along with the main body of the beast. Even if it didn't have a berserker mode, Quinn didn't like his chances of beating the beast alone. He would have to let go of this one. When the beast dashed towards the forest, and a minute had passed without it returning, they knew that they had achieved a victory. Cheers and congratulations were shouted out between friends and classmates. They had managed to survive such an intense ordeal. Many of the students had gone up to those who had put themselves on the front line, congratulating them for being brave and attacking the beast from the beginning. This included Dell, who had come over. It was no surprise. Quinn, after all, had contributed nothing to chase away. The other students deserved the praise. But then, a female with light pink hair stepped in front of Quinn and bowed down to him. As she lifted her head, her eyes were filled with tears. "Thank you so much for saving my friend," the pink-haired girl said. After that, she hurried off to join her teammates. The thanks should have made Quinn feel good, but it didn't. It had made Quinn feel bad instead. Originally, he had only gone out there not to save the students, but because he saw it as an opportunity to take their blood. Just like Dell, his reactions were because of selfish reasons, not because he was trying to be a hero. He didn't deserve the praise. When the students had all settled down, they decided to have a minute of silence, out of respect for the students that had been lost. But they couldn't spend much time because they were in a serious situation right now. The beast had chased the group quite a distance away from their original location. Not only that, but Dell had no clue where they were or how to get back. While running away, he had headed in a random direction and didn't take a note. There were no maps for the planet, since the place was still undiscovered. "What do we do now?" a student asked Dell. Leo had arrived at the camp where the distress signal had come from. Before arriving here, he had dealt with 2 more incidents from other camps. It was clear that this planet was still quite active with beasts. Still, it was too early to tell whether it was worthy of the decision to make it a red portal planet. If there was only a few advanced tier beasts, then they got rid of them. Then they could give the planet a green grade. For the first time, though, after arriving at the location of a distress call, there were no students around. Leo started to hunt around for clues when the sounds of large, heavy footsteps could be heard heading in his direction. "Now what do we have here?" Leo said. The sound of the footsteps could be heard loud and clear. Leo was able to see the energy as each foot was placed on the ground. He activated his ability a little more, and now his vision was even wider than most people could see with their own eyes. It didn't matter how many trees or obstacles were blocking his path. Whatever was heading towards him, he would be able to see it clearly, and that he did. A large flame of red energy seemed to be spiraling in his direction. The energy of the beast seemed to be getting wilder on the outside, but upon looking closer towards the core of the beast's crystal, Leo could see the energy was being more condensed. The flames of aura were entering the crystal, while the leftovers were sparkling on the outside. This was what happened when a beast was just about to go into berserker mode. Soon the condensed energy would explode, and the power of the beast would temporarily increase. "If it gets to that point, it might be a little bit inconvenient," Leo moaned as he drew out his trusty sword. There was no need for Leo to move from the spot he was in. The beast was already coming towards him, so he waited. Finally, the beast had arrived, barging itself through, knocking the trees down in its path. Unfortunately, Leo was unable to see that the beast itself was injured from the battle with the students. His ability allowed him to see the outline of the beast and the things around him, but he wasn't able to see the finer details. If the beast was nearly dead, he could tell from their aura, but this one still had plenty of life. Immediately 6 lines of red energy came whipping out at Leo. Focusing his mind, he waited until all paths of the red energy crossed each other. In that moment, he took a single swing of his blade. The 6 vines that had come out at him had all been sliced off. Leo could see that the energy was still flowing through the vines as they started to regrow. But what he was more concerned about was the energy building up in the beast's body. Ignoring the vines and looking at the head of the beast, it was quite large and a distance away. "Well, I don't want to go all the way up there," Leo said. He placed his sword in his sheath and prepared himself. When he was sure where his target was going to be, with a single movement, he drew all of his energy out and pulled the blade out of the sheath as fast as he could. The line of energy was thin and white, but the beast had no time to react, and it had completely passed through its neck. A few moments later, the beast's neck slid from its head and fell to the ground. Its body then shortly followed after. "I guess you can't regenerate your head," said Leo. After defeating the beast, he didn't stop for a moment, not even to extract the crystal core from its body. He didn't have much time to investigate the area before, and the beast had suddenly attacked him. But during the fight, he had spotted something while looking at the beast's aura from his position. In the distance, there were dead bodies of the students. They no longer produced a flame of aura, but a little leftover essence was visible on their bodies a few hours later. Right now, the students were a priority, and if they had run into similar beasts to the one he had just faced, he feared the worst for the students. Back where the others were, just by the mountainside wall, Dell and a few of the other students were discussing their next plan. Dell had called over the main helpers and the strongest-ranked students for their advice. In Dell's class, there weren't many strong students. There were a couple of level 6 students and a few level 5, but that was it for the class. Vorden was considered one of the strongest students despite his level, but he had not been invited to the group meeting hosted by Dell. This was because Dell still bore a grudge against Vorden, and after what Quinn had said, he now hated their whole group. "Maybe we should head back where the beast came out from," a student suggested. "If we follow the trail of broken-down trees, then maybe we can find out our way back." "That won't work," Dell replied. "The forest is large, and if that beast lives there, then there are likely to be many trees and paths that have been created by the beasts, and those similar to it. If we follow one of those paths, we might even be leading ourselves to be dinner for another beast." "Well, you suggest something," another student said, their tone sharp, rather annoyed at the situation. Even though they felt like so far Dell had been useless at everything. Still, Dell was of a higher rank than them, not just as a teacher, but in the military as well, and they needed to show him some respect. He could also be the deciding factor on their grades. So the students bit down their tongues and moved on, but that didn't change the fact of how useless he had been. "I think we should go up, on one of the side paths of the mountain," Dell suggested. "If we go up high, then we can see the forest from above. We should be able to see where the area we started from was, and if we can't see that, we will be able to spot the shelter." It wasn't a bad idea, but after encountering such a dangerous beast, the idea of going further into the unknown was frightening for them. Still, with the only other idea already shot down by the teacher, what choice did they have? The students were told to inform the others of the plan, as each group made sure they had their supplies, and started to head out. "This is so stupid," Sia complained. "We should at least stay here for a while and wait. Maybe another group or the sergeant will come and find us. If you're lost, you're meant to stay still." "Well, I think we're just climbing the mountain to see where we are. Then we'll probably head back down," Layla explained. "I still think we should wait a little bit before doing anything," Sia replied. "Although I don't like Dell," Vorden said, "maybe for these guys staying in one place isn't a good idea. Look at their faces. Now they are moving and it's making them forget about what happened. They might think if they stay there, other beasts will come and attack them, maybe even the same one. But as we move, at least we are working towards our goal." Okay, pretty boy, you convinced me," Sia replied. "Let's go." The group couldn't decide which side of the mountain they wanted to take. There was the option of sending half the group on one side, too. But after seeing how effective they were as a single unit against a powerful beast, they felt that it was best to keep everyone together in one powerful group in case something similar happened again. They started to travel up the left side of the mountain. Dell had made the decision and was ordering the group around, but he wasn't the one that stood in front of the group. Instead, some of the stronger groups had their frontliner. Dell had made some type of excuse, claiming that he was the only one able to use the communicator to contact the sergeants. What if he disappeared? If that happened, then the sergeants would have no clue where they were. But this was a lie. The sergeants didn't have a clue where Dell's class was. They only knew that they had sent out a distress signal. The scanners had been turned on. They would still record points and work as long as they were within a 200-meter radius of Dell, even though the scanners still provided each student with points for their team. There was no fierce competition anymore. The group decided to stay closer, and no one was venturing far away from their team or far from the whole group. While scanning new items, the scanner would still do the same, but the sense of competition was no longer there. The reason why Dell had turned the scanners back on was because they were good tools for finding out what was around them, whether there were dangerous plants or precious ores. But the primary function of the scanners for Dell was to detect beasts and their levels, while those beasts were still far away from the group. If they came across another beast and it was far too powerful for their group to handle, Dell didn't even dare to imagine the number of casualties and the number of remaining students that would be able to come back with them to the military camp. The group slowly progressed, and eventually the slope started to level out. They could still see the large wall and the ground behind them, so they found it a little strange. Usually, any mountains had a lot of ridges with leveled and inclined ground, so this mountain seemed strange. The open field was long and still very green, like most of the forest so far. With plants here and there was a lot more open space. They were higher in elevation now, but they were still unable to see the top of the mountain from below. One of the more curious students went over to the edge and looked down. Even though they could still see the part of the forest where they made their last stand against that beast previously, they were unable to see where they had started from the beginning of the shelter. Depending on which direction Dell had run from the camp, the only way for them to see the shelter, or where they once came from, was to climb to a high point, so they could see the area around them from a bird's-eye view. But the slightly inclined ground looked like it could go on for miles, and the only way left to get higher up the mountain was to scale it using their hands and feet. But that wouldn't be a possible option for their group.
Hi, Quinn here. Wondering what happens next? If you want to jump the queue and unleash all episodes, click on the link here and install the Pocket FM app.